Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's installment of the Harmony Insights lunch date series that I have set up. I am thrilled to be having this conversation with you today. My name is Erich Kurschat. I am the owner of Harmony Insights, which allows me to help companies use the DISC personality assessment with their teams, including remote workers when they want to engage and develop remote employees online, completing assessments and bringing people together online for conversation that would normally happen face-to-face. I'm also the founder of HR Hot Seat, which is an inclusive mastermind community serving HR pros, over 2,500 of them across the country in 10 different chapters at this point, 10 different licensed chapters. So you can find out more about HR Hot Seat at hrhotseat.com. As I mentioned, this is one in a series of lunch dates that I have put together, Harmony Insights lunch dates, and it's somewhat selfish. I wanted to use the first 30 minutes of my lunch hour to talk with people that inspire me, and I've been doing that since late last week, and I have conversations scheduled throughout this week. You can find out more about them at harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. Today is a conversation that I've been looking forward to for a while. David Fisher, otherwise known as D or D Fish, whatever you want to call him, as he said, as long as it's not David, because that's reserved for just a few close friends and relatives of his. D Fish and I have had a couple of conversations now. We spoke on his podcast, which he'll talk about, and have had a couple of other conversations around professional networking and what that looks like doing it face-to-face, what it looks like doing that virtually online. And he and I really wanted to get together today to have an open, honest conversation, potentially entertaining conversation about how we are experiencing success with online networking, what our challenges are, a couple of serious pet peeves that we might want to share, and more importantly, engage you in a dialogue, a meaningful, actionable dialogue about this thing that we could honestly be spending quite a bit of time doing these days, given that we are sequestered to our respective homes. So D Fish, welcome to Harmony Insights lunch date.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. We don't have a beer this time, but
we don't have a beer. That's a shame. We can rectify that, I'm sure, but we'll stick to what we're doing here.
Here's the first tip for everybody. If you have a coffee mug, they don't know what's in it. And
no idea until you start slurring your words.
This could be tea. It could be some really good gin. You never know. I'm just saying. You don't know what I'm wearing below, and you don't know what's in here. Those are my first two tips.
It's a little bit of a provocative title for this. As HR folks, we don't usually go that route, but networking without pants. We're going to talk about what that means today, of course. Give people a sense of who you are and what you're doing. Just a minute or so.
Yeah. So my name is David Fisher. So most people call me D or D Fish. You can call me David. Just don't call me late for dinner. That's my only thing. It's a horrible joke, but I'm a dad, so I can use dad jokes. For the last 15 years, I've run a company called Rockstar Consulting. It's a professional development firm, which is just a fancy way of saying that I help people and organizations get better at doing their jobs. Most of my work focuses on the sales, entrepreneurial, and networking space. I've actually written 9 books on networking, sales, and LinkedIn. I run a podcast called Beer Beats in Business. I am a I do a lot of speaking, or I did a lot of speaking, and will do more in the future, training for organizations and associations, and a lot of one-on-one and group coaching for people, I said, usually in the sales, small business, entrepreneurial spaces.
Excellent.
And I've got a 9-month-old who you might hear, but we'll see.
All right, we would welcome. He's welcome to join us. I mean, if he needs to make an appearance, I mean, we're not above that.
He actually jumped on a LinkedIn Live session I was doing last week. My only beef is that he's way cuter than I am, so just pulls too much attention.
Well, I have promised people that our conversation today, like all the other Harmony Insights lunch dates, is going to be both meaningful and actionable. And those are words that you could define in any number of ways and apply them in different ways. The meaning that I want to begin this conversation with is, we're all dealing with something together, albeit separately in our own homes.
Right.
And that's COVID-19, which I feel like day to day is just getting crazier and crazier. But I want to ask you right off the bat, how have you personally been impacted by the coronavirus?
It's a really good question, and I would say that the biggest impact, besides something that's I think happened for a lot of professionals in my space and for many, is a lot of my work. I was speaking for conferences, running trainings for companies. That's all gone, right? That literally disappeared within a week. My schedule got very open, and so that does bring a lot of fear and uncertainty. The advantage that I had is that, I said I've been running my own business for 15 years. Uncertainty is kind of the pool that I swim in normally. So in some ways, I was able to kind of pivot very easily. Didn't mean it was easy, but I was able to pivot easily. And actually, the biggest impact has actually been more on a personal side. Is that my wife is a therapist and now works from home. I said I got a 9-month-old. We have a 2 small bedroom condo that we were in the midst of trying to sell so we could have more space. And that has been paused. So, for the last month, we've kind of been in each other's business, and we're learning a lot about love and closeness and also about boundaries. We have a chair that anybody can sit in and that nobody talks to them. But that's, and I heard something I think very appropriate the other day, which is we're not working from home. We're going through a medical and public health crisis at home and trying to get some work done while we're doing it. Yeah. And I think that is actually really important to remember, because we have to understand that it's not just business as usual. We're just doing it from home. Yeah. So
we're doing a lot from home, to your point, and it's any number of things. But one of those things is professional networking, and that's why we're on the having this conversation today. And we chose rather questionably to call it networking without pants, because it can be done without pants. Not saying that is a recommendation. However, that's what we do these days. I think just because we are at home and no longer able to come together face to face, that doesn't mean we hit pause on the networking.
Right.
And I wanted you and I to have an open conversation about the fact that some people are good with that. They just pick up where they left off face to face, and maybe they've been doing it all along and it comes very naturally for them, and they got all the best practices in place and they're working on mastering it like anybody else. Mm-hmm. And on the other end of the spectrum, there are some folks who aren't quite sure about that. This isn't something that they were ever comfortable with to begin with for whatever reason. And they may be more or less comfortable doing it online, but it still doesn't feel like something that comes naturally. And just real quick, if you would humor me, I put together just a quick poll, and it says, how confident do you feel networking online? And it gives you a few options there. So if you're playing along at home and you can see this poll that I've put together, let me know, are you not very confident? Are you somewhat confident? You think it's a piece of cake, or it depends? I learned to throw that option in the last couple of conversations we've had. People say, well, it depends. So D-Fish, let's break this down a little bit. Let's talk through, what do you see as, we'll just start from the beginning. What's the importance to you at this point in time of continuing to network and do so effectively online?
Yeah. So I think, and obviously I'm biased. I write books on networking. I think networking is important. I actually think it's probably one of the fundamental building blocks of a good career. And we pay lip service to that, right? You'll hear, oh, networking is important, but then nobody talks actually about what it is. And for me, networking is really about establishing a relationship, right? It's not a transaction. It's not just going to an event for one time, getting a business card, but it's really about building kind of that long-term relationship with somebody, to build that trust, to build that ability. It doesn't mean you have to be BFFs with them, but to be able to reach out and help them, or conversely to ask for help when you need it. And so I think that in this time particularly, networking is important for, I think, 2 big reasons. One is just, it keeps us freaking sane, right? If you think just the fact that, I don't have an office, I've worked from home for, I said almost 15 years, but a lot of that working from home was going to the coffee house, right? Going out in the world, seeing people, not being here in this room. There's an emotional toll to being caught up in one place. And I think that one of the things that human beings are wired to do is, in times of stress, communication helps. So I think that even on a personal level, it's really, really important. But on a professional level, not to be, alarmist, but the drop in output in the last month was 29% of GDP. Like we've never seen a drop like that ever, right? We don't know what's the effect is going to be on the economy when we actually are able to leave the house. This is not going to be, but it's not going to be good. And nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, but it's not going to be good. People who have good networks rarely lack for work is probably the bluntest way I can say it. It's like you have access to opportunities, you have access to people who have information. And it's, again, not about being BFFs. The research shows that it's about having broad networks where you have nodes in different kind of centers of influence. Like, I mean, Eric and I have gotten a chance to know each other over the last 6 months, which is great, but he knows all of you. I don't know you at all. And now we get a little chance to interact and overlap, which is great. What online networking for me allows right now is that you can keep these relationships going or starting them right now so that in 3-6 months from now, you can leverage them. I once told a client that networking is solving a problem you're going to have in 2 years.
Yeah.
Right. So,
go
ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's funny that you mentioned that. So going back a number of years, didn't appreciate the value of networking online or otherwise. And when I left my corporate HR job of 16 years and started my own business and I most needed my network in place, guess what? I was starting from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And I was figuring out LinkedIn and I was beginning to serve other people and all of the things that I should have been doing all along. But I thought, oh, I'm happily employed. The people who are networking are those who are actively looking for other jobs.
Right.
And I just had it all wrong. And if I could go back and do it over, even when, and maybe especially when I was happily employed, I would be fostering a network either face-to-face or virtually that is there maybe to serve me along the way, to help me get my needs met, but certainly to help me serve others. And I think that's something that's more important of people's focus is how am I serving others through the networking I'm doing. So what do you think, we've laid out some of the importance of building a network and how it can be done online. We'll get into some of that in a little bit. What do you think are some of the challenges that people face just in general when it comes to networking and maybe specifically virtual networking?
Well, I think probably one of the biggest challenges we have in networking is a misconceptualization of it, right? If I say networking to the most of the people who are on this call, you would probably have this image of a networking event, right? Like literally at a conference or a chamber of commerce, whatever, and it's bad appetizers and awkward conversations and just, feeling weird. And you're real, that one salesperson who you're like, oh, I don't want to be like that guy. And that's what we think. So we don't do it. And I think that hurts people more than anything. And also the fact that human beings are wired for direct impact or direct effects. We think if we do X, we're going to get Y. Whereas something you just said, I think is so valuable, this idea of like, hey, I'm just going to keep putting it out there. I don't need anything right now. I call it networking karma, man. I'm just going to, hey, can I get you an introduction? Can I give you some information?
Yeah.
It will return, but A, maybe not right away, and B, probably not in a way that you think. And so we kind of have to get past that in our brain, right?
Zig Ziglar and others have talked about the universal law of reciprocity that says if you help enough other people get what they want, you will get what you want. Dave and others have chimed in and said, yeah, but when I am working, and I do have a job that I'm focused on, like it's hard to consider that this networking is something I need to continue doing in the meantime. I think now that we're all confined to our homes, it's a little bit more top of mind because we don't have the other distractions.
For sure.
But one of those big challenges out there is, well, how do I attend to this? How do I make space for this, when I am so focused on so many other things in my life?
Right. I think a big thing, and Dave, thanks for saying that. I think that is really what happens for most people. We're panicked, so we network because we need that job. We get the job, we're trying to figure it out, we're feeling comfortable, and then, oh crap, we don't have a job again. But there's the saying, the best time, I think it's an old Irish saying, the best time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining. What I always suggest is make it easy, like to cultivate relationships these days. This is where I think digital tools, even beyond the place we're in right now, makes life easy. I mean, two things I would suggest. One, and we can talk about LinkedIn a little bit. There are some ways to use LinkedIn to scale your outreach and to stay in touch with people with just a few minutes of time and a much broader network. The other thing is putting in, and this is what I would suggest everybody right now, put into your calendar, hey, I want to have 2 networking conversations a week, or even 1. If you have 1 good conversation a week in a networking type context, that's 50 a year. That's powerful, right? I mean,
But then I come back like most people are thinking, and I say, well, D, that's great, but there are 24 hours in a day and however many in a week. I have room for far more beyond 1. Shouldn't I? Everyone's telling me that I should be having 20, 30, 40 networking conversations, right? Isn't that success if I have 30 of them? What is with this one business?
You'll do 1. I mean, success is actually following a process. I mean, I do a lot of work with, business owners and entrepreneurs who are starting their and building their businesses. And they go, well, hey, there's this great CRM product, or there's this great marketing tool, or this great track. Like nothing, no process is good unless you use it, right? So yeah, I mean, before this, I'd have between 4 and 6 networking conversations a week. Now, some of those are over beer because I do like beers, and in person, I'll go grab a beer or a cup of coffee. If you think you don't have time, we all eat lunch. I mean, the great book that kind of got me started on this was Never Eat Lunch Alone by Keith Ferrazzi, who just pointed out like, hey, you got to eat lunch, eat it with somebody.
Why do you think we're having this conversation now?
Right.
I mean, part of it was me staying connected to my audience, but another part of it, quite selfishly, was I want to talk to people that inspire me because I could use some inspiration right now. Why not invite friends to be a part of those conversations? 30 minutes go by, I continue on with my day, and that was time better spent than it could have been.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to interrupt just to say, remind people, for some reason, the poll wasn't working. I apologize for that. But if you have questions along the way, comments, you can enter them into the chat box. And if we see those and can work them in, we're happy to answer those.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would add, a couple of challenges that I've seen people facing. Number one is I do a lot with personality styles. I mentioned the DISC personality assessment. I speak a lot. I have a session called Network Like an Introvert. And I think to a point you made earlier, people think, well, I have to do it like everybody else does. And I can't do it like that. So I may as well not do that. I think another obstacle is that we're given the tools to do this, especially online, and we don't necessarily know how to use them effectively. So let's talk about LinkedIn, because that's something that we've brought up a couple of times already. And I have some solid pet peeves around LinkedIn, and I don't know if you do. I want to say I haven't figured this out yet myself, and you and I aren't trying to put ourselves out there, even though you literally wrote the book on networking. We're not saying we figured this entirely out.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about LinkedIn and the blunders we've made and the successes we've had with that particular online platform.
Yeah.
You want to give it a start?
I mean, how much time? When you write a book on networking on LinkedIn, you definitely have a list. I think, and this is actually something very actionable for everybody on the call today. The biggest pet peeve I have is not something most people think of. It's actually that people don't spend time crafting a LinkedIn profile that speaks to the audience they want to serve. So most people, when they think of their LinkedIn profile, they think of their resume or something like that. And it looks bad. It doesn't actually help the person whose profile it is. And then they waste all of their other activity. So like just this week, spend some time going, who is the most important audience I'm speaking to through my LinkedIn or online experience? And let me have my LinkedIn profile aimed at them, answering the questions they have. It doesn't take that long to separate yourself from the pack. And I mean, that's probably the biggest pet peeve, because everyone wants to talk about the sexiness of, what should I post? And yeah, that's great. But even if you post or engage, it all goes back to your LinkedIn profile. And so that's probably the biggest pet peeve. And the other one, of course, is the idea of reaching out to connect and then trying to sell me something.
For sure. I see so many people complaining about that.
Mm-hmm.
A couple that are at the top of my list. And I'll be the first to admit that a lot of this stuff isn't black and white. You'll ask
Not at
3
all.
people and get 5 different opinions, right? But I spend some time career coaching. I'm connected with colleagues who do that well. I know Susan Barbie is on this call. She's part of Grow Forward Coaching and Consulting, and she helps people in this manner. A lot of people will get advice saying that your LinkedIn profile should mirror your resume. And I just don't believe that. I think
Nope.
LinkedIn gives you a unique opportunity to be personable and have your voice come through and have people get a sense of who you are and what you value in a way that goes beyond the black and white bulleted resume that you may have put together. And I don't think
Yeah.
enough people take advantage of that difference in medium.
Oh no, I mean, there's a bunch of HR professionals on here who goes home on a Friday night and curls up with a couple resumes and a nice glass of wine. Like, no, even people who are recruiting don't want to read resumes. You're exactly right. It's tell your story. And again, I think that we're uncomfortable with that because we haven't been taught, or we're kind of, or we're just afraid of making a mistake. Hey, here's a great thing about a LinkedIn profile. Put it out there. If you make a mistake, you can change it, right? That's what, like 20 years ago, if I had said to you, you could have a personal professional website that would tell your story in exactly the way you wanted it to be told to the exact audience you wanted, you'd be like, that's amazing. And now we're like, oh, I don't want to worry about it. Yeah. Tell your story. Because if you don't tell it, somebody else is going to tell it.
Yeah. Gosh, it makes me think of all these different sayings I've heard. One, if you don't toot your own horn, someone else may toot it for you and play a sour note.
Yeah.
I think that's cheesy, but fun. I've also heard a lot of people are hesitant to jump onto LinkedIn because they see some profiles that they just love, just like websites, right? If I were to design a website today, I would see a million like yours, which is fantastic. And I'd be like, oh, I can't do that. And then I've heard it said, never compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. Right? They're farther along for a reason, and you got to start somewhere.
Right. Never compare your making of movie to somebody's highlight reel. Right.
There we go. Should we just list off these platitudes that we've
over
the years?
But I think that it's really important to know because I actually, on one of my podcast episodes, I was talking with a friend of mine, Sean Carey, who's a big social media trainer. He works for Schwab, so a big company helping their people get on social. And he goes, D, people like you make it hard for everybody else. And I mean, he was making a very good point. He's like, my job, and I try to tell this to people, because again, like I'll work with salespeople or entrepreneurs and business people about LinkedIn. I go like, my job is to look good, right? My job is to write. I spend hours of my day writing content and doing videos. I mean, I've been doing this on LinkedIn. I started training people in 2007. Don't compare yourself with me, not because I'm amazing. I'm just, to your point, farther along.
Yeah.
But if you can start engaging now, having those conversations, man, so much business in my career has come from people I've never met in the real world, right? That we just started a conversation. And there's a guy, Ryan Roten. I've been on his podcast. He's been on mine. He's written a great book. It's called Career Cred. It's about personal branding for careers. Might be useful for many of the readers. Ryan is a great guy. I've never met him. He's a good friend. I've met his wife actually, because she came through Chicago for work. We had dinner, but our whole relationship, we've collaborated together, is all predicated on being on LinkedIn.
Well, in the 5 minutes that we have left, let's leave people with some immediate action that they can take before we tie things up toward the end. One of mine is tied into my greatest pet peeve, and that is the people who don't personalize their LinkedIn connection requests.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're trained that hitting a button that says connect means that we are now connected and connected meaningfully. Jump on LinkedIn, there's the button, you see it on your phone, you see it on your desktop, hit connect, and you're good to go. And the larger your network, the better your odds of whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think we're missing out on our greatest opportunity to make a solid first impression and a meaningful first impression, to say, hey, D-Fish, I've been reading your stuff. I watch what you do live on LinkedIn every day at 11:30. I read your books. Listen to your podcast. I'm a huge fan. I feel like I have so much to learn from you. I'm in the space of bringing people together to network as well. Would you mind making a connection? And that gives you enough context to know what to do with that. The fact that I get 9 out of 10 connection requests on LinkedIn that aren't personalized lets me know that people aren't being intentional, or they just don't know that they will have much greater success, however they define that, by giving people some sense of context when they reach out to them to request a connection.
I think you're absolutely right. I would actually, though, say you don't have to be that in depth. I mean, if you want to send me a message and tell me, or any author, you've read our stuff or you like our stuff, that's an easy way in. But there might be somebody who you don't have that strong of a connection with them. It's okay with saying, hey, I saw your post. This is actually something that I do a lot.
Yeah.
Works great, starts a lot of great conversations. I saw your post that my friend Eric commented on. I really liked what you put, would love to connect.
Yes.
Most people will go ahead and connect with that. So it can be light. And somebody had asked, Karen, you mentioned scaling LinkedIn. This is the beginning of that, because if I can start to have people who I'm just lightly connected to, I'm now seeing their stuff, and then I'm sharing content or I'm engaging in conversations that they can see, that's where that scaling really comes in. Because I'm not having to call each person individually. I mean, if I can post something and have 1,000 people or even 300 people see that post, for a few minutes of work, I had 300 impressions. That's what I mean by that scaling thing.
I would just, it's all about intentionality, and that's kind of what I keep coming back to, is being intentional. I did an entire Honest HR podcast through Sherm, where I talked with Kelly Zippel, who was the host at the time, about this very topic. And I went on this entire rant about personalizing your requests. And after that podcast, as usually happens, I got a number of connection requests on LinkedIn. And there were people who didn't personalize it, and I had to bite my tongue, but the one thing I wanted to respond with was, really, you just listened to an entire podcast where I said this is something that I value. Having a sense of what the person you're trying to connect with values and speaking to that will work to your advantage, however in-depth you choose to go.
They might have done it on the phone and hit it by accident. I've done that before.
Yeah. All right. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. And I guess that would be kind of the two suggestions I would leave everybody with. One is, all these things we're talking about, especially with LinkedIn, some of you might be kind of power users already, but a lot of times people don't get active because they're afraid of being like what they dislike. And the analogy I'll use is, when I teach salespeople, some people really struggle because they're like, I don't want to be a pushy salesperson. And so then they don't do anything. And I'm like, hey, as long as you're concerned with being pushy, you'll never be pushy. You might be afraid of making a mistake or a faux pas or doing something wrong on LinkedIn, then you don't do anything. Take that fear away. If, again, to what Eric just said, if you're going to be, if your intention is good, the karma you're putting out into the world, in this case, LinkedIn, is good, right? So when in doubt, speak up. And then the only other tip I would give, especially with the one-on-one stuff, have one conversation on a networking side a week. Like, literally just go even to your LinkedIn and go, who are 5 or 10 people that I kind of know? I guarantee you that if you reach out to 5 people and say, hey, would love to catch up in these weird times, do you have time for a 30-minute Zoom call? 4 out of 5 are going to say yes. And the 5th probably is just way too busy with something else.
Right. Or at the very least, like happened to me today, just, hey, it's been a while. How are you?
Yeah.
And that I was like, that rekindled a connection with somebody in the HR hot seat community that I haven't spoken to in a while. I really appreciated that.
Love it.
It is 12:30. I want to respect people's time. I want to thank you for being a part of this conversation. You mentioned earlier, you referred to your podcast. That is called Brats.
No, Beer, Beats, and Business.
Beer, Beats, and Business. And I actually set up a quick link. I don't know if you have one, but if you go to harmonyinsights.com/BBB for
nice.
Beer, Beats, and Business, it'll take you right to that podcast episode, and people can
perfect. That was a great episode.
Subscribe.
I really like it.
Earpods keep falling out. Where else can people find you online, Dee?
We talk about LinkedIn. I would encourage all of you to, and even if since you're on here and I see all the names, you don't even have to customize it. Connect with me on LinkedIn, search my name, davidjpfisher.com, or go to linkedin.com/in/IMDFish, IAMDFISH, or my website, davidjpfisher.com is a good way of getting in touch.
Awesome. And if you hold on for just a second, I've been waiting for the setup for 30 minutes. I'm going to go, actually, I have something over here I want to show people.
Oh, he's got pants on. He's cheating. You have
You see
pants
what I did
on.
there?
You have pants on. You're totally cheating.
I'm going the PG version.
Fair
I
enough.
do have copies of your book, so if people haven't read your books yet,
Oh,
they're out there and they are plentiful. I think you said you've written 9 at this point, which is
yeah. They're
super
all on
impressive.
Amazon. Yeah.
All right, wonderful. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for joining me. If anybody would like to tune in later this week, including on Friday for Susan Barbie's conversation around getting clarity and confidence in the job search, in your job search, you can find out information about that and a few more conversations coming up at harmonyinsights.com/lunch dates. I really appreciate you all being here. Stay safe and healthy and connected, meaningfully connected with one another. Check out D Fish online. And D, thanks so much for joining me today.
Eric, thanks for inviting me. This was a blast.